They thought I was just a harmless old woman, the kind you wave at on front porches and forget about seconds later. But when my daughter's husband decided it was time to secure his future by breaking into my private things, he didn't expect glitter to explode in his face or a recording of his betrayal to play out like a true crime podcast. I raised a family, buried a husband, served 30 years as a nurse, and somehow I became invisible in my own home. But not anymore. You're about to hear a story of lies, trust shattered, and justice wrapped in gold and silver sparkles. This isn't just about a theft. It's about being dismissed, being used, and what happens when a quiet woman decides she's had enough. You want to know how it ends? Stick around. You won't see the twists coming, but you'll never forget them. I hadn't heard the sound of a second car in my driveway for years, not since Harold died. So when tires crunched across the gravel and a U-Haul pulled up behind my hydrangeas, my hands trembled around the handle of the teapot. I knew they were coming, but still, seeing Emily and her husband Jack step out, hauling boxes and duffel bags, made it all real. My daughter was moving back home, not for a visit, to stay. I met them at the porch, wiping my hands on my apron, trying not to cry. Emily hugged me tight, pressing her face into my neck like she was 12 again. "Thanks, Mom," she whispered, "just for a little while." Jack was all polite smiles and, "Let me get that for you." He carried their suitcases inside as if he'd done it all his life. I showed them the guest room, newly cleaned, the best in the house, the one with the morning sun and the view of my old rose bushes. "You didn't have to give us this room," Emily said, setting her tote down on the bed. "Where else would I put you?" I said. "It's your home too." They both smiled, but something flickered across Jack's eyes as he looked around the room. I chalked it up to discomfort. It's never easy to move back in with your in-laws. Over dinner, Emily explained everything. Jack had lost his job, downsizing, they said. He'd worked in logistics, whatever that meant these days, and it was a restructuring issue. Emily's hours at the clinic had been cut back, and the mortgage was 3 months overdue. I listened quietly, refilling their glasses and passing the bread. "You stay here as long as you need," I told them. "We'll figure it out." Jack nodded, grateful. "I'll pick up something soon. I'm not one to sit still." And at first, it looked like he meant it. He rose early each morning, walked their dog, even mowed my lawn without asking. He helped me prune the garden and fix the hinges on the pantry. "No use sitting around," he'd say, "idle hands and all." He seemed eager to help. He complimented my cooking, laughed at my old jokes, even asked about my late husband, Harold. "You must have been married a long time," he said one afternoon while we worked in the backyard. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Jack shared little stories, too, about growing up poor, about his dad's temper, about wanting better for Emily. It was disarming. I began to feel like maybe I'd misjudged him. He was trying. "You've got a good man," I told Emily one evening while we did dishes. She smiled, tired but sincere. "I think so, Mom. He's just stressed, but he's doing his best." Maybe he was, but still, I noticed things. Jack spent a lot of time in the den, staring at his laptop. When I offered to help with resumes or contacts at the hospital, he politely declined. "I've got a system," he said. "Just need a little luck." One afternoon, while folding laundry in the living room, I saw him through the window, standing at the edge of the porch, looking down the street. Not like he was thinking, more like counting. I shook the feeling off. Maybe I was just used to quiet. By week 2, Jack was making a habit of helping in the garden. He asked about the irrigation system, how old the locks on the shed were, what kind of fertilizer I used. Strange questions, but I figured he was just being thorough. "Got a green thumb, after all," he said with a wink. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe they had simply fallen on hard times like so many people had. I'd worked with broken people all my life. Patients abandoned in ERs, forgotten in nursing homes. I'd seen how hardship could break even the strongest. Jack wasn't broken. He was just temporarily set back. At least, that's what I told myself. One Sunday, I found him fixing the trellis in the side yard. "This house is solid," he said. Real valuable, I bet. You ever think about downsizing? I paused, unsure how to respond. It's just me here, but no, I like the space. He nodded, hammering a nail. Yeah, makes sense. Just wondering. That night, I sat in bed and stared at the ceiling. For the first time since they arrived, something in my chest twisted. Not fear, not exactly, just unease, like a whisper I couldn't quite catch. But in the morning, Jack greeted me with coffee and told me he'd found a local handyman gig for the week. Won't bring in much, but every bit helps. And just like that, the doubt faded. Maybe he really was a good man. Maybe I was just getting old and suspicious. But then again, I'd been a nurse for 30 years. I knew when someone was performing. And Jack? He was putting on a show. By the third week, Jack had become part of the furniture. Not in a bad way. He just blended into the rhythms of the house. Always helpful, never pushy. He fixed the flickering porch light I'd been ignoring for months. Helped Emily wash her car. Even offered to repaint the mailbox when it started to rust. He also talked. A lot. Not about politics or money, but stories from his childhood. Memories of his mom working double shifts and making tuna casseroles stretch 3 nights. He told me about a high school teacher who believed in him when no one else did, about saving up for Emily's engagement ring for over a year. His voice would grow soft, eyes far away like he was still there. It was disarming the way he shared himself. "You remind me of my mom," he said once as we folded laundry together. Tough, caring, never took a day off if someone needed her. I didn't know how to respond. It had been a long time since anyone said something like that to me. I smiled, unsure if he meant it or if he just knew how to say the right things. Then one evening, after I returned from the market, I saw Jack sitting in his car. It was parked at the edge of the driveway, engine off, windows fogged. I almost passed by without looking, but something stopped me. His shoulders were hunched. His hand covered his face. I stepped closer and tapped gently on the glass. He jumped. "Jack," I said, "are you okay?" He rolled down the window halfway, eyes red. "Yeah, just needed a minute." "Are you sure?" He sniffed and nodded. "I'm sorry, Martha. I didn't mean to worry you." "You didn't. I paused. "You can talk to me." He looked down, then back at me with a helpless smile. "It's stupid. I feel like such a failure. I hate what this is doing to Emily. She didn't sign up for a man who can't hold down a job." My heart clenched. It wasn't often you saw a man his age cry like that. Not with sincerity in his voice and defeat in his posture. "You're not a failure," I said gently. "Hard times come and go. What matters is how you get through them. Together." He nodded, biting his lip. I don't want her to resent me." "She loves you," I told him. "Anyone can see that." He wiped his face with his sleeve and gave me a crooked grin. "Thanks. Means more than you know." That night, I went to bed thinking maybe I'd been too hard on Jack. He was under pressure, trying to be the provider, trying not to break in front of his wife. Or me. And yet, 2 nights later, after everyone had gone to bed, I walked past the hallway and saw a faint light spilling under my bedroom door. I stopped. My door had been closed. I always closed it. Habit. The light disappeared before I reached the handle. When I opened it, the room was dark. Everything looked untouched, but something felt off. I checked my dresser. Drawers still shut, lamp unmoved, but my jewelry box was ever so slightly turned. Not enough to matter, not enough for most people to notice. But I noticed. Still, I said nothing. Maybe I'd left the lamp that way. Maybe Jack had just peeked in to ask something and changed his mind. 2 days later, while putting fresh linens away, Jack came into the room with a toolbox. "Fixing the creaky hinges on the closet," he explained. "Notice they squeak when you open them at night." "Thank you," I said, forcing a smile. He worked quickly, humming softly. As he stood, he glanced around the room, just once, but his eyes lingered on the corner near the dresser. Not long, just a heartbeat. Then he looked away. If I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't have believed it. But I did. That split-second glance, almost unconscious, told me something he didn't mean to say. I remembered the old safe tucked into the closet, hidden behind winter coats I hadn't worn in years, the one Harold had installed years ago, the one only I had the key to. Jack didn't know that. He shouldn't have known there was anything to look for in this room at all. Yet something in his eyes betrayed a different story. Later that night, as I sat alone in the kitchen, I tried to dismiss the unease bubbling in my chest. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe grief had made me too watchful, too suspicious. Or maybe, after all these years, my instincts as a nurse, my instincts as a mother, were warning me. Still, it was hard to ignore that Jack cried in his car, that he shared stories and fixed my house and said all the right things. Could someone do all that and still lie? The thought twisted in my gut. He reminded me of one of my old patients, a sweet man who used to bring flowers to the nurses every week, until we found out he'd been slipping painkillers into his shoes and selling them outside the hospital. He smiled the whole time they took him away in handcuffs. Not everyone who cries is kind. Not everyone who fixes your trellis is doing it for love. Some people just know how to perform. It started over breakfast. A quiet morning, the sun just beginning to slide across the hardwood floors. Emily had left early for a staff meeting at the clinic, and Jack lingered longer than usual at the table, swirling his coffee absent-mindedly. "You ever think about long-term planning?" he asked, not looking up. I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Oh, insurance, estate stuff, that kind of thing." He chuckled nervously. "Emily and I were just talking last night. How we're getting older, need to start thinking about wills and all that fun stuff." I sipped my tea, watching him carefully. "That's smart." "Yeah, and I told her you probably have it all figured out. I mean, you seem really organized." I nodded slowly, but my stomach tightened. I try to be. Jack leaned back in his chair, stretching. "Emily mentioned once you had a policy from your nursing days. Is that still active?" There it was, slipped in so casually I almost missed it. "I don't think she'd know," I said mildly. "It's not something we talk about." He smiled, sheepish. "Right, of course, sorry. I'm just curious. You've built a good life, Martha. I admire that." I forced a smile, trying not to show the flicker of unease crawling up my spine. Later that afternoon, while I was in the study organizing photo albums, Jack knocked on the door holding 2 mugs. "Thought you could use a pick-me-up," he said, handing me one. "Thanks," I said, surprised. "Emily's not back yet?" "Still at the clinic," he replied, settling onto the arm of the couch. "I figured we could have some one-on-one time. We don't really get that much." I offered a polite nod, trying to relax. The coffee was warm, not too strong. He always seemed to know how I liked it. "So," he said after a few sips, "this house must hold a lot of memories." "It does," I replied. "Harold built that bookshelf over there. Emily learned to walk right on that rug. Every corner has something." He looked around thoughtfully. "It's beautiful, solid. They don't make homes like this anymore." I nodded, surprised at the genuine softness in his tone. "I remember Emily once said you stayed up 3 nights in a row when she had scarlet fever. That true?" I smiled. "She was 6, burning up. I sat by her bed with a wet cloth the whole time." Jack's face changed slightly. "You're incredible, you know that?" I waved him off. "Just a mom doing her job." "No," he said, leaning forward. "You're the reason Emily turned out the way she did. She's kind, loyal, resilient. That's you." His words were flattering. Too flattering. I felt a familiar pang in my gut. Something about the way he delivered praise felt measured. "I appreciate that," I said cautiously. Jack sipped again. "So if something happened to you, I mean, heaven forbid, would Emily know what to do? I mean, where you keep important papers, insurance stuff, that kind of thing?" I looked at him, the mug frozen halfway to my lips. "She knows enough," I replied. He nodded, as if that satisfied him, but he didn't look away. His eyes held mine for just a moment too long. "You've probably got everything organized down to the last detail." I set the mug down. "I do." He smiled again, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Anyway," he said, standing up, Just wanted to chat. Glad we did. Me too, I lied. As he left the room, I sat in silence, the aftertaste of his questions lingering in my mouth more than the coffee. Was he being thoughtful or fishing? I glanced at the bookshelf Harold had built, the edges worn from years of fingers brushing over them. In that moment, I remembered Harold's voice, deep and certain. People don't always say what they mean, but their eyes will. Jack's eyes were curious today, too curious. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, thinking about every conversation Jack had struck up since he moved in, about the questions buried in compliments, the glances around the house, the careful phrasing. He remembered everything I said, dates, details, sentences I hadn't thought twice about. And now, he was asking about life insurance. I told myself it was nothing. But the part of me that spent 30 years in emergency rooms, the part that had learned to read people before they unraveled, she wasn't convinced. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the second twist struck me like a slap across the face. I'd gone into town for groceries, something I usually did on Fridays. But Emily had called from work and asked if I could pick up a prescription for one of her patients. And I figured I might as well restock the pantry. The trip was shorter than usual, no chatting with neighbors, no browsing. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Jack's car was still parked out front. Odd. He usually volunteered at the animal shelter on Tuesdays. At least that's what he told Emily. I didn't think too much of it until I opened the front door and heard faint movement upstairs. No music, no talking, just the creak of floorboards. I stepped inside quietly, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. The house was too quiet. My heart, already skeptical these days, quickened. I moved toward the stairs, every step deliberate and silent. Halfway up, I heard it. Drawers opening. Not the slow slide of someone looking for socks. No, it was brisk, purposeful. Files. My office. I reached the top step, just as Jack turned around. He froze, one hand on the drawer of my filing cabinet, the other holding a small bottle. "Oh," he said, startled. "Didn't hear you come in. I was just looking for some aspirin. Head's killing me." I blinked. "Aspirin?" "Yeah. Emily said you usually keep it upstairs. Maybe I misunderstood." "It's always been in the kitchen cabinet. Top shelf, right side." He laughed, but it was too forced. "Right, that's what she meant. I guess I wasn't thinking straight." He closed the drawer quickly, stepped away. "Sorry if I scared you. Just didn't want to bother you while you were out." I nodded slowly. No bother. But in that moment, I knew. He wasn't looking for aspirin. He was searching. That night, I waited until they went to bed. Emily exhausted from work, Jack whistling softly as he brushed his teeth like nothing had happened. I stayed up, sipping tea, pretending to read. At midnight, I went into my bedroom and pulled the old reading lamp from my nightstand. It was heavier than it looked. A gift from Harold, one of those retro-style lamps with a base wide enough to hide things in plain sight. Inside, taped beneath the base, was an old portable camera I hadn't touched in years. A relic from when Harold had a brief stint with home security enthusiasm. I used to laugh at him, but tonight, I was grateful for his paranoia. I spent the next hour rigging it up discreetly, the lens peeking just slightly through the carved edge of the lamp, motion-activated, battery-powered. Primitive by today's standards, but enough to capture movement, especially in dim light. I tested it once, pretending to open drawers. It clicked on, silent, steady, perfect. Then I turned to the real inspection. I opened my filing cabinet, drawer by drawer. The papers were where they should have been, mostly, but the order felt off. I always kept my medical records in front, tax forms behind. Tonight, they were reversed. Some pages even bent in ways I'd never allow. I'd spent my life in hospitals, in structured chaos. Paperwork was sacred. Then the drawer with the estate files, my will, Harold's life insurance policy, deeds, passwords, and the small brass key I kept taped to the bottom of that folder. Gone. For a moment I stopped breathing. I rummaged slowly, my fingers tracing every corner. Then I found it, tucked into the side crease, half dangling. Not gone, but moved. I hadn't touched it in months. Jack had. I sat on the edge of my bed, heart pounding. The camera light blinked once, recording my stillness. Was he testing the waters, seeing what I had, planning something, or was I imagining this? I remembered his voice from earlier. Emily said you keep it upstairs. She never said that, and that was when my suspicion hardened into something colder, something heavier. Not just unease, not just doubt. It was betrayal. He was watching me, measuring me, maybe waiting for the right time. I thought of the photos in my office, the ones Jack had always glanced at when he passed through. Me holding Emily as a baby, Harold on our wedding day. A framed quote, "Love is earned, not owed." Jack had seen that quote a dozen times, and still, here he was. I pressed my fingers to my temple, willing my body to stay calm. No, this wasn't just about old papers and missing aspirin. This was something else entirely, and if Jack thought I was too old, too soft, or too blind to see it, then he was about to learn just how wrong he was. From that night forward, I became an actress in my own home. I smiled when Jack entered the kitchen each morning, poured his coffee just the way he liked it, and asked how the job search was going. He would always respond with something vague, "Had a promising interview yesterday," or "I'm waiting to hear back from that logistics firm downtown." I'd nod, offer encouragement, then return to washing dishes while pretending not to see how he avoided eye contact. He thought I was buying it, that I believed the same tired routine. But I was watching. I noticed how he always took his phone calls outside now, or down in the basement. He spoke softly, always glancing around first like a teenager sneaking a cigarette. At night, I'd hear the creak of the back porch door and see his silhouette pacing, hand pressed to his ear. Emily, sweet girl that she is, never seemed to notice. She trusted him, loved him. She worked double shifts, brought home takeout when I forgot to cook, and told me not to worry so much. "He's just stressed, Mom. He'll find something." But I knew the sound of lies. I'd heard them whispered in hospital beds, in waiting rooms, from husbands covering up bruises and sons explaining empty bank accounts. And now I was hearing them in my own home. One Thursday afternoon, as I folded laundry in the guest room, I heard Jack's voice through the half-open window. He was in the backyard talking into his phone in hushed tones. I wouldn't have heard a word if the wind hadn't been so still. "Yeah, she's got the place to herself during the day. No alarm system either," he said, voice sharp. "Just a couple locks and a dog that's too old to bark." I froze. He paused, then laughed low. "I'm telling you, man, this lady's clueless, totally old school. Keeps all her stuff in one safe. Jewelry, cash, the works." My stomach turned to stone. Then came the words that lit a fire in my chest. "She's a sweet old lady, but come on. Completely out of touch. Easy money. It's like taking candy from a grandma. She wouldn't know a con if it bit her." There was a pause. "Yeah, the daughter's a problem, but she works late. I can handle her." He chuckled again. "I'm telling you, this is the kind of setup you dream about. She trusts me. Thinks I'm fixing the goddamn fence while I map out the whole damn house." I dropped the towel in my hands, heart pounding so hard it made my ears ring. He continued, unaware. "Nah, she doesn't suspect a thing. Smiles at me every day like I'm the second coming. Poor lady's still grieving her dead husband. She's just grateful to have company around, totally vulnerable. This is going to be smooth." He ended the call shortly after, whistling as he re-entered the house like he hadn't just gutted me with a dozen careless words. I stood in the hallway for what felt like forever. Sweet old lady, easy money, clueless. I remembered the way Harold used to joke that my kindness would get me killed one day. "You trust too easily," he'd say, squeezing my hand. "One day, that's going to bite you." Had it? Had I let Jack into my home, into my daughter's life, into my heart, and handed him the keys to everything I'd spent a lifetime protecting? I wanted to storm downstairs, to confront him, to throw every insult he just used back in his smug face. But I didn't. Because if I exploded now, it would be my word against his. Emily wouldn't believe it. Couldn't. Not yet. No. I needed more. He thought I was soft. He thought I was slow. He'd made a mistake. Because what Jack didn't realize was that behind every clueless old woman is a lifetime of watching, learning, and surviving. He wanted to play a game? Fine, I'd play. But he wasn't going to like how it ended. That night, I sat in the dim glow of my study and made a decision. I would no longer simply observe. Jack had declared war, whether he realized it or not, and I had no intention of going down quietly. He might think of me as an easy mark, a lonely widow, desperate for companionship, but he'd underestimated one critical thing: what a woman does when her family, her home, and her dignity are at stake. I went to the garage and opened the old sewing chest Harold used to store power cords and odd tools. Beneath a tangle of extension cables and broken chargers was a tiny lapel mic he'd used for a community theater production 10 years ago. It still worked. I tested it with the portable voice recorder I'd dug from my filing cabinet the night before. By morning, the mic was hidden neatly beneath the bookshelf in the living room, just close enough to catch conversations, far enough not to draw suspicion. Jack liked that room. He made most of his late-night calls there, pacing between the fireplace and the couch like a general plotting a campaign. I didn't have to wait long. 2 nights later, just after Emily left for her Thursday night book club, the recorder blinked red. I waited until the next morning, heart in my throat as I played back the audio at my desk. Jack's voice was low but clear. "She's definitely asleep by 10, doesn't even lock her bedroom door," he said, a note of smugness coating every syllable. Then another voice, male, unfamiliar. "You sure she's got anything worth it?" Jack scoffed. "Of course she does. I've seen the papers, cash, bonds, jewelry, the safe's in the back closet. I've already got the key." My fingers clenched the edge of the desk. The other man, Eddie, Jack called him, sounded cautious. "And the daughter?" "She's at book club every Thursday, 7 to 9. That's the window. In and out. Old lady won't even know what happened until morning." There was silence. Then Jack laughed. "She's so damn trusting, man. You should hear the way she talks to me, like I'm some hero. Poor thing probably thinks I'm her second son." The clip ended. I sat there trembling, not with fear, but with something colder, more precise. I opened a new folder on my computer labeled Contingency. I scanned every document I had: property titles, bank statements, my will. I compiled it all into a digital binder and emailed it to my lawyer, along with a note. "If anything happens to me, anything at all, please open this immediately and notify Emily. I've taken precautions, but I need someone I trust outside this house. Martha Lane." Then I printed a letter by hand, folded it carefully, addressed it to Emily. It began with, "If you are reading this, something has gone very wrong." It wasn't just a goodbye. It was a blueprint. Everything I suspected, everything I'd found, the safe, the camera, Jack's conversations, every breadcrumb laid out in ink. I sealed it and tucked it into the hollow of the old vase in my closet, the one Emily always said was too ugly to display. That night, I made another call. "Hi, this is Martha Lane. I live on Hawthorne Drive. I'd like to report something strange. I don't know if it's anything, but I'm feeling unsafe in my own home." The officer on the other end was gentle, skeptical. "Has anyone threatened you, ma'am?" "No, not directly, but I think someone is planning to." "To hurt you?" "I don't know," I said truthfully, "but I have a feeling, and I've learned to trust those." He promised to file a note, to put a unit on light patrol in my neighborhood, just in case. It wasn't much, but it was something. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, lights off, hands folded across my chest like armor. The house creaked and settled as always, but every sound seemed sharper now. Every movement downstairs a possible warning. This was no longer suspicion, no longer instinct. Jack was planning to rob me, possibly hurt me. And yet the next morning he kissed my cheek in the kitchen like nothing had changed. "Morning, Martha. You sleep okay?" I smiled, matching his false warmth. "Like a baby." He handed me a cup of tea. "Emily says you're doing some decluttering in the study. Want help with the filing cabinet later?" "No need," I said gently. "I've already taken care of it." His eyes flicked toward me, brief, calculating. I turned away before he could see the fire there. I had everything I needed now, and if Jack wanted to walk into a trap with both eyes closed, I was done stopping him. At exactly 2:03 a.m., the hallway creaked. I'd been awake for hours, lying motionless under the covers in my dim bedroom, eyes fixed on the faint glow of my nightstand clock. I'd counted every breath, every whisper of wind against the window. The air in the house felt thick, like the moment before a storm when the sky turns too still. Then came the soft click of my bedroom door. I didn't move. Jack slipped in, dressed in black sweatpants and a faded hoodie, face obscured by a baseball cap pulled low. His movements were confident, practiced, like someone following choreography they'd rehearsed in their mind 100 times. The room was cloaked in shadows, save for the faint red light from my hidden camera nestled between books. It blinked once, then locked into record mode. Jack didn't see it. His eyes were locked on the antique dresser in the far corner. I slowed my breathing to mimic sleep. My heart, however, pounded with anticipation. Jack crouched low, easing open the second drawer, the one I'd prepared so carefully. Inside, it looked untouched, but beneath a few old scarves and photo albums lay my glitter trap, coiled and ready. He reached in with the confidence of a man who thought he'd won, and then, pop! A sound like a champagne bottle bursting echoed through the room, followed by an explosion of gold and silver glitter, erupting like fireworks in the dark. Jack jerked backward, yelping, his arms flailing as the sparkling storm covered his face, his chest, his hands, everything. God, what the... he shouted, stumbling back into the nightstand. A lamp toppled to the floor with a loud crash. I sat up slowly and flicked on the overhead light. Jack froze in place, blinking through the cloud of glitter, now coating his clothes and skin like festive shame. "What exactly are you doing in my bedroom at 2 a.m, Jack?" I asked, voice calm, cold. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. I heard a noise," he stammered. "I thought maybe you fell or something. I was just checking." My gaze traveled from his glitter-covered hands to the drawer he had pried open. "So you thought I fell? And the best way to help was to dig through my dresser?" He wiped at his face, smearing glitter across his cheeks. "No, I mean, I thought I saw light coming from here. Maybe someone broke in? I was just trying to make sure you were okay." "By opening a drawer?" He flinched, caught between lies and panic. The glitter didn't help. Each movement sent more of it cascading to the floor, sticking to his arms, his neck, the carpet. "This isn't what it looks like," he tried again. "Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like," I said, standing. He took a step back. "I didn't take anything, I swear." "Didn't have the chance," I said coolly. "Tell me something, Jack. When you opened that drawer, what were you hoping to find? Aspirin again?" His face twisted. "Martha, please, because I'm wondering," I interrupted, "how you knew that particular drawer, or the safe key inside, or that I'd be asleep by this hour." He went pale. I took a slow step forward. "You think I don't know what you've been doing? The calls you've made? The lies? The whispering at night like a teenager planning a joyride?" He looked like he might run. "You're not the only one who can plan, Jack," I said softly. "Smile at someone while plotting behind their back." His voice rose, desperate. "You're misunderstanding everything. This is just what?" I asked. "A test run before next Thursday while Emily's at her book club?" Jack's eyes widened. That, more than anything, confirmed everything. Behind me, the camera continued to record. Every word, every twitch, every glitter-covered breath. I moved to the nightstand and pulled out my phone. Jack tensed, maybe thinking I was calling Emily, or worse, the police. But I didn't call anyone. Not yet. Because I wanted him to sweat. "I think it's time we stop pretending," I said, voice quiet. "And time you start explaining." Before Jack could stammer another half-baked excuse, we both heard it. The sound of hurried footsteps pounding up the stairs. "Emily!" Her voice rang out down the hall. "Mom, what was that noise? Are you okay?" Jack turned toward the door, panic spreading across his glitter-drenched face. "Oh Oh no! No, no, no! The bedroom door burst open. Emily stood frozen in the frame, blinking rapidly as her eyes took in the scene before her. Me, standing calmly in my nightgown, phone in hand, and Jack, standing near my open dresser drawer, coated in gold and silver glitter from head to toe like a party favor gone horribly wrong. Her voice cracked. "Jack, what is this?" Jack wiped at his eyes, smearing glitter into his eyebrows. "Babe, I was just checking on your mom. I thought I heard a noise." "At 2 a.m?" she said, stepping inside slowly. "Covered in glitter?" I tripped," he stammered. "I was looking for her sleeping pills and knocked over a lamp or something. The stuff just flew out. I don't know what it is. Maybe some old craft supplies?" I said nothing. Just calmly walked to the dresser, opened the top drawer, and pulled out the small recording device. Jack froze. Emily watched me, her expression unreadable. "I think it's time you both listen to something," I said quietly. Jack moved toward me. "Martha, don't. You don't need to—" "Sit," I said sharply. He stopped. I turned on the speaker and pressed play. Jack's voice came through, crystal clear. "She's definitely asleep by 10. Doesn't even lock her bedroom door." Emily's brow furrowed. "Yeah, she keeps everything in one place. Cash, bonds, jewelry. The safe's in the closet, and I've already got the key." Jack looked like he wanted to disappear. "She's sweet, you know? Talks to me like I'm some kind of hero. Poor lady thinks I'm family. She's clueless, totally out of touch." Emily's hand slowly rose to her mouth. I continued. "This is the kind of setup you dream about, man. It's like taking candy from a grandma. She wouldn't know a con if it bit her." Jack lunged toward the dresser. "Turn it off!" I stepped aside. "Don't you dare!" Emily's voice trembled. "Jack, you please tell me this isn't real." He spun toward her. "Em, she's manipulating you. She twisted my words. That was a joke. Some stupid taken out of context." I pressed another button. Another clip. "Don't worry about her. She won't even remember. She's old. Probably thinks the glitter came from some birthday card she forgot she opened." Emily's face crumpled. Jack reached out. "Babe." She stepped back like he was venomous. "You said she wouldn't remember. Because she's old?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "You planned to rob my mother," she whispered. "And then vanish? With me? With her money?" "No," he croaked, but it was weak, defeated. "I defended you," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I stood up for you when she had doubts. I believed in you." Jack dropped to his knees, glitter falling from his sleeves like guilt made visible. "Emily, I didn't mean for it to go this far, but you meant it to go somewhere," she snapped. "You got the key. You waited until I was gone. You called someone named Eddie. You were going to take everything." I spoke then, softly. "You used my love for her against me. That's what I'll never forgive." Jack's head hung low, words failing him. Emily turned to me, eyes full of betrayal and heartbreak. "How long have you known?" "Long enough," I said gently. "Long enough to know he didn't deserve you." She covered her face, shaking with sobs. "I brought him into this house." "You didn't know," I said. "Now you do." The room filled with silence, heavy and sharp. Then Emily stood straighter, wiped her eyes, looked down at her husband. "You need to leave," she said. Jack looked up. "What? Now?" He hesitated. Emily's voice hardened. "If you don't, I'll make that recording public. Police, internet, doesn't matter. Everyone will know who you are." Jack rose slowly. His eyes were no longer pleading, just defeated. He walked to the door, then turned. "You two are heartless." Emily's voice was cold as stone. "And you're a thief." Jack left, leaving a trail of glitter down the hallway like breadcrumbs of disgrace. Emily stood in the doorway, arms folded, body trembling. I moved beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We'll be okay," I whispered, and for the first time in weeks, I truly believed it. The morning sun cast long, gentle rays through the kitchen window, illuminating the glitter trail Jack had left behind. Tiny flecks of gold still clung stubbornly to the rug and floorboards, as if the house itself refused to forget. But Jack was gone. An officer arrived shortly after sunrise. Emily had called them, voice trembling but firm. The evidence was too strong to ignore. The recording, the camera footage, the confession laced with mockery and intent. Jack had returned to the guest room to pack, but his exit was interrupted by the flashing lights of the patrol car outside. He didn't fight it, just stood there, defeated, glitter still on his jeans as they placed the cuffs around his wrists. He didn't even look at me when they led him away. Emily watched from the porch, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her jaw clenched against the tears. As the cruiser drove off, she finally let out a sound that was part sigh, part sob. I waited until she came back inside. She didn't speak, just stood in the living room looking around like she no longer recognized the space. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered at last. I stood across from her, hands folded. "There's nothing for you to be sorry about." She shook her head. "I let him in here. I let him use me. Use you. I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. You warned me, and I still..." Her voice cracked. "I feel like such a fool." "You're not," I said softly, moving closer. "You're someone who loved and trusted. That's not foolish, Emily. That's brave. But I handed him the key to our lives. I practically begged you to let us stay here, and he wanted to rob you." I reached out and took her hand. "Emily, I didn't let you stay here because I trusted Jack. I let you stay here because I love you." Her eyes filled again. "I don't know how to fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I said. "He's gone, and we're still standing." She tried to laugh, but it came out a choked sob. "How can you be so calm about this?" "Because I've lived long enough to know what matters," I said. "Jack thought the most valuable thing in this house was locked in that safe, but he was wrong." Emily looked up at me. "The most precious thing I have," I said gently, "is you, my daughter. No one can steal that." Tears ran down her cheeks freely now. She collapsed into my arms, like she had when she was a little girl with scraped knees and tangled hair. I held her tightly, rocking slightly, the way I used to when the world felt too big for her. "I was so sure I knew him," she whispered. "I know," I said. "I know. I wanted to believe he'd protect me." "He should have," I murmured. "But now you know, and now you can protect yourself." She nodded against my shoulder. We stayed that way for a long time, the only sounds the creak of the old floorboards and the birds beginning to sing outside. The glitter still sparkled faintly in the morning light, a stubborn reminder of betrayal, but also of truth, of traps set with love, of lessons learned. Eventually, Emily pulled away, wiping her face with her sleeve. "I'll clean up the living room." I smiled. "We'll clean it together." She managed a small smile. That afternoon, we vacuumed side by side, scooping up the last of the glitter and sweeping out the residue of Jack's deceit. Every speck that disappeared into the dustbin felt like a piece of closure. Slow, steady, necessary. That night, we ate together at the kitchen table, just the two of us, like we hadn't in years. The house felt lighter somehow. The silence between us wasn't painful. It was peaceful, whole. 3 days after the arrest, the letter arrived. No return address, just my name, handwritten in blocky, urgent strokes on the front of the envelope. I knew the handwriting instantly. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity, fueled by a flicker of old habits and the need for closure, won out. I sat by the fireplace with a cup of tea and carefully slit the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in smudged ink and uneven lines. Jack's words tumbled across the page with desperation disguised as remorse. "Martha, I know you probably never want to hear from me again, and I wouldn't blame you, but I needed to say my piece before this all ends. I'm sorry. I never planned to go that far. Things spiraled. Eddie pushed. The debts got worse, and I panicked. But I want you to know, it wasn't entirely my fault. You never liked me. You always made me feel like I didn't belong in your perfect little house. that I wasn't good enough for Emily. Maybe if you hadn't judged me from the start, I wouldn't have felt so trapped. Maybe I wouldn't have snapped. I stopped reading. Maybe he wouldn't have betrayed us if I'd been more welcoming, if I'd smiled more during dinner, if I'd offered him warmer blankets or less suspicion. The teacup in my hand tightened slightly, the steam rising unnoticed. I stood, walked to the fireplace, and tossed the letter into the flames. Emily walked in just as the paper caught fire, curling into glowing orange ribbons. She didn't ask. She just looked at me, saw my posture, the calm set of my shoulders. "Was it from him?" she asked. I nodded. She watched the flames consume the last of Jack's handwriting. "Anything worth reading?" "Not really," I said. "Just ashes." Emily crossed the room and took the seat beside me. "I don't know if I'll ever stop being angry at myself." "You will," I said. "One day it won't hurt so sharply. It'll just feel distant." She was quiet for a long time. Then she looked up with that same spark I used to see in her when she was 10 and wanted to run away to the circus. "Let's go somewhere." I blinked. "Where?" "Anywhere. A weekend, just us." I tilted my head. "The beach?" Her smile widened. "I haven't seen you in anything but gray and beige in 15 years, Mom. Let's find some sunshine." I laughed. "You want to see me in color?" "I want to see you live again." 2 days later, we stood on the edge of a quiet beach town, the Pacific wind tugging at our hair. The air was sharp with salt and possibility. Emily wore a sundress and sandals. I wore a yellow linen dress I hadn't touched since Harold's funeral, a shade I thought I'd buried with the old life. As the waves rolled in, soaking the cuffs of our jeans and cooling our ankles, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Light. Not in the literal sense, but something deeper. A weight had lifted, not completely, but enough to breathe differently. Emily turned to me, laughing as a wave splashed her toes. "You look like sunshine," she said, reaching out to squeeze my hand. I looked down at the dress, the color loud and joyful against the pale shore. "I feel like I remembered something I'd forgotten," I said. "What's that?" "How to belong to myself." We sat on the sand until sunset, letting the ocean lull us into that kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. Jack was gone. The glitter had been vacuumed, the wounds still healing. But in that moment, watching the tide pull in and out, I realized something he never could. The real treasures in life don't live in safes or folders or keys. They live in trust rebuilt, in dresses dusted off, in daughters who come home again. The papers were signed on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Emily sat across from the notary, her signature steady despite the tremble in her fingers. I was there, sitting silently in the corner of the office, letting her do this part on her own, because she needed to. It was quiet in that room, not tense, not angry, just quiet. The kind of silence that wraps itself around you after a storm, heavy and calm. Jack hadn't contested anything. He hadn't shown up. No calls, no letters, no objections, just silence. And that silence, after everything, was the most expensive thing he had ever given her. After the final stamp hit the paper, Emily stood and walked out into the light drizzle. I followed her to the sidewalk, watching as she tilted her head back and let the soft rain hit her face. She wasn't crying. She was breathing. "He's really gone," she said, voice calm. "He's really gone," I echoed. Jack had vanished after the arrest. Bailed out by someone we didn't know, never came back for his things. Word had it he'd tried working under the table at a construction site, then got fired after 2 weeks. No one knew where he was now, or maybe they did, but no one cared enough to say. There were no more calls, no texts, just a blank space where his presence used to be. Back home, life had slowly shifted. The house felt like it remembered how to be a home again. The rooms no longer held secrets. The floorboards didn't creak with worry. The quiet that used to ache now felt earned. Emily started going back to the library, volunteering at the animal shelter, picking up hobbies she'd let slip over the years. Pottery, gardening, small things that filled her days with purpose instead of patching someone else's mess. And I opened my doors. It started small. A pot of tea shared with a neighbor who'd recently gone through a bitter divorce. Then another woman joined us, then two more. All of them had stories. All of them had bruises you couldn't see. I didn't advertise it. Didn't start some official group with pamphlets and slogans. I just let women in. Every Tuesday evening, they came to my living room. We didn't sit in a circle or take turns speaking. We just talked, laughed sometimes, cried when we needed to, shared recipes, compared old photos, and when someone finally whispered, "He made me feel like I was worthless," no one gasped. We nodded. We understood. It was quiet healing, the kind that doesn't post before and afters online, the kind that happens slowly over steaming mugs and comfortable blankets, the kind that tells you you're not alone, not crazy, not broken beyond repair. I called it my Tuesday table. Emily joined us once, just once. She sat on the edge of the couch listening to a woman named Lorna describe how she'd rebuilt her credit and self-worth after 20 years with a narcissist. When Lorna finished, Emily didn't speak. She just reached across the table and took her hand. That said enough. We didn't need to dissect every pain anymore. We had survived. That was enough. The house that had once felt like a stage for betrayal was now a sanctuary. The same walls that had echoed with suspicion now rang with the low hum of soft music and the clink of teacups. And me? I had never been so tired, but I had also never felt so awake. It was a Saturday morning when the call came. I was tending to the back garden, trimming the lavender bushes that had begun to spill onto the walkway. The air was crisp, the sky cloudless, a quiet, perfect day. The phone buzzed in my apron pocket. "Mrs. Davis?" the voice on the line asked. "Yes." "This is Officer Kincaid, Coeur d'Alene Police Department. We just brought in a John Davis. Goes by Jack. Your former son-in-law?" I froze, the shears in my hand pausing mid-snip. "We found him in a storage unit just outside city limits. Apparently he's been squatting there. He's in violation of multiple parole conditions, and he has outstanding gambling debts that have caught up to him. We were wondering if you'd like to file additional charges on your end." For a long moment, I didn't say anything. My heart beat steadily. Not fast, just present. "No," I said finally. "That won't be necessary." "Are you sure?" The officer pressed gently. "We have the recordings you provided before. You'd have a strong case." I looked at the patch of sunlight pooling near my feet, felt the breeze kiss my cheek. "I'm sure," I said. "I'm not carrying him with me anymore. I've already let him go." There was a pause on the other end. Then, "Understood. Thank you, ma'am." I hung up and returned to the lavender, clipping the stems carefully, each snip as intentional as my answer had been. Inside, Emily was folding laundry at the dining table. I told her about the call. She didn't react the way I expected. No outburst, no triumphant smile. Just a long, thoughtful silence before she said, "I think that was the kindest ending possible. For you." I nodded. "I didn't do it for him." "I know," she said. "You did it for yourself." And then she looked at me with eyes full of something I hadn't seen in a long time. Not sorrow, not worry, pride. "I'm proud to be your daughter, Mom." The words landed like sunlight after a long winter. "I wasn't always sure," she continued, folding a towel with more care than necessary. "When I was with him, I kept questioning whether I was strong enough, whether I could live with the kind of conviction you did, but now I see it. I see what you protected and what you let go." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. We both learned. That afternoon, I sat on the front porch, letting the sunlight warm my shoulders. My cat, a fat orange tabby named Cinnamon, lay curled across my lap, purring softly. The garden smelled of lavender and rosemary. The porch swing creaked gently under my weight. From across the street, I heard laughter, children playing tag, their voices bright and piercing. A red ball bounced into my yard and a young boy chased after it, offering me a shy wave. I waved back. Emily came out with 2 glasses of iced tea and handed one to me before sitting beside me. "You look peaceful," she said. "I am." Cinnamon rolled over, one paw stretched lazily onto my thigh. "You ever think you'd start over at 63?" she asked. I smiled. "It's never too late to choose quiet over chaos. Never too late to forgive yourself." She leaned against me. We sipped our tea. In that moment, there was no need for justice or vengeance or apology. There was just the porch, the breeze, the smell of herbs, and the sound of children being exactly what they were supposed to be, joyful, unaware of how the world sometimes breaks and mends all in one lifetime. And me? I was whole again.